Tonight, we descend into a time when dawn meant dread and darkness was never far behind. Forget the polished myths of noble knights and glittering castles. This is not that Middle Ages. This is the unvarnished version, the one where survival was an achievement and comfort was a rumor. You're not a king, a bard, or even a tradesman. You're a commoner, and the world you're about to enter doesn't care about your hopes or your dreams. It cares that you pay your dues, know your place, and don't die before the harvest. This is a world lit by fire and fear, ruled by superstition, hunger, and the absolute certainty that life is hard and death is easy. The ground is cold, your clothes are damp, and every cough in the village could be a warning. There's no medicine as you know it, no safety net, no second chances. Here, a stubbed toe can turn septic, a fever can take your child overnight, and a bad winter can mean cannibalism is back on the table, literally. This isn't the Dark Ages because people were ignorant. It's the Dark Ages because the light hadn't been invented yet. You've left behind central heating, clean water, antibiotics, breakfast cereal, human rights, and even your mattress. All you've got now is scratchy wool, a hole in the roof, and a daily routine carved from sweat, obedience, and fear. This journey isn't for the faint of heart. It's for the curious, the brave, or maybe just the morbidly fascinated. But before we begin, take a breath. Feel the warmth of your room. Hear the hum of the refrigerator. These are luxuries no one in 1325 could imagine. When we say, you wouldn't survive a day, it's not a joke. It's a fair assessment. You, with your phone and your multivitamins and your Uber Eats app, would last exactly as long as it takes to step outside your mud brick hovel and get bit by the wrong flea. So if you're ready to have that fantasy of medieval life peeled back, layer by filthy frostbitten layer, stay with me. This is the story of a day in the Middle Ages, not from the vantage of a throne, but from the ground, where the straw is damp and the rats are bold. Welcome to the real medieval world. Let's see how long you'd last. You wake up to the sound of a distant bell clanging through the mist. It's not a gentle chime or the soothing ping of a phone alarm. It's iron on iron, loud, crude, and designed less to rouse and more to demand. You're not in a bed. You're lying on a sack of straw that's barely earned the title mattress. If a mattress is something that's supposed to provide support and not hay splinters in your back. The straw reeks of mildew, animal droppings, and something worse you can't quite name. There's no blanket, only a coarse wool sheet that's more pest hotel than cover. You're damp, always damp. The thatched roof leaks, and the floor, made of packed earth, has soaked up last night's rain like a sponge. Everything is cold, from the tips of your fingers to your aching joints. You're 22, and already your body creaks like you've spent decades working a plow. Because you have. Your eyes adjust slowly to the darkness. The only light filters in from a slit in the wall, not a window. Glass is too expensive. What you see is a single room shared by your entire family. Mother, father, siblings, a baby or two, and an uncle who never quite left. In the corner, a goat stirs. Beneath the bench, a chicken flaps and startles at the sound of your movement. The fire in the hearth has gone cold. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof that's barely sufficient to keep the smoke from choking you to death during the night. It doesn't help much. Your lungs sting with the residue of burned wood and dung fuel. You cough. Everyone does. The smell hits you in waves. Human sweat, animal waste, old food, wet wool, and something rotting in the corner. that no one's had the energy to investigate. You want to stretch, but you regret it immediately. Your limbs are stiff, your back groans, and your knees feel like they've been forged from gravel. You pull yourself upright with the grace of a sack of potatoes, brushing fleas from your shirt as if it's part of a morning ritual. It is. There's no privacy, no separation, no me time. You wake up beside your entire life, and there is no door to a better one. Outside, the village stirs. Smoke rises from other huts. Someone's shouting about a lost pig. A dog barks. Somewhere, a baby cries and is not comforted. Your neighbors live just a few feet away, but those feet are soaked in mud, sewage, and straw. The streets are not paved. They're not even streets, just well-trodden paths that double as drainage ditches and trip hazards. This is your morning, not a sunrise of possibility, but of obligation, of hunger, of work to be done before the sun gets too high and the real labor begins. Welcome to 1325. You're not on a tour. You're trapped in time. Home. It's supposed to be a refuge, a place of warmth and comfort, a little pocket of safety in a chaotic world. But not here. Not in 1325. Your home is a hovel, literally. A squat one-room structure made of wattle and daub, which is a fancy way of saying mud smeared over sticks. The walls crack in the winter and sweat in the summer. They're neither straight nor strong, but they do their best to keep the wind out, and fail most of the time. There's no foundation. The floor is just dirt, stamped flat by generations of feet, soaked with whatever leaked or died there, and swept, if ever, with a branch. When it rains, it becomes a shallow bog. When it doesn't, the dust clings to your skin, your clothes, your teeth. The roof is thatched, bundles of straw tied together and laid over crooked beams. It leaks often, especially during storms, which is most of the year. Mold blooms in the rafters like a second ceiling. Birds nest there. Mice chew through it. Sometimes a rat falls through in the night. You've stopped screaming when that happens. That's just life. Windows. Don't be ridiculous. You're not rich. Your house has slits in the walls, stuffed with cloth in winter and left open in summer. Light is scarce, but the cold and the bugs are not. Inside, space is a suggestion. There's one room and everyone is in it. You sleep beside your siblings, your parents, sometimes a cousin, and often a few of your animals. A goat in the corner, a pig by the door. Chickens huddle under the makeshift bench. They're not pets. They're part of the household economy. You all live, breathe, sleep, and defecate in the same confined space. The air is thick, humid, and smells of sweat, smoke, manure, and something worse. Always something worse. There's a hearth, yes, but no chimney. Smoke fills the room during cooking and lingers long after. Your eyes burn, your lungs ache, but you can't open a door or window because the wind would blow ash everywhere and kill what little warmth there is. So you live in a low oxygen fog that burns your throat and settles in your clothing. Visitors, when they come, don't announce themselves by knocking. They're known by their coughing as they step through the haze. Furniture is minimal. A table if you're lucky, maybe a stool or two. The bed is a platform of wood and straw that is never truly dry. Lice live in it. So do fleas. You pick bugs off your blanket the way someone might dust crumbs off a couch. You can't even be angry anymore. There's nowhere else to go. This place isn't shelter. It's containment. A wooden box barely fending off the elements while making sure you're close enough to your responsibilities to never rest. It's loud, crowded, damp, and alive in the worst ways. You don't own it. You maintain it, like a prisoner scrubbing their cell. Welcome to your hovel. It's not much, but it's all you'll ever have. Your bed, if you dare to call it that, is less a place of rest and more a slow-acting punishment. It's a wooden frame, or maybe just a pile of straw in a corner, stuffed with dried grass, old hay, and whatever scraps you could scavenge from the barn last autumn. It's not soft. It crunches. It itches. It smells like it was recently occupied by something with hooves. And it probably was. There's no linen, no sheets, and certainly no mattress. Forget memory foam. You don't even have memory. You're too busy trying to forget what bit you in the night. Over time, the bed has become its own living organism. Fleas, lice, bedbugs, your true nightly companions, crawl in and out of the straw with a routine that borders on religious. You don't sleep so much as hover on the edge of unconsciousness, swatting at your body and praying for the dawn. The blanket you pull over yourself is made of coarse wool that hasn't seen water or soap since the last thaw. It weighs a good 10 pounds now, bloated with filth, grease, and the accumulated misery of many long nights. When it rains, and it always rains, the blanket becomes damp and heavy, pressing against your body like a sodden sack of potatoes. Mold clings to it in spots. You don't wash it. You can't. Laundry is a luxury you don't have time or fuel for. Lying down doesn't bring relief. It brings awareness to every ache, every bite, every protruding twig under your spine. Your joints throb from a lifetime of hard labor that began before you could even pronounce the word rest. At 25, your back is twisted, your knees grind when you stand, and your neck has the flexibility of a rusted hinge. You go to bed tired. You wake up exhausted. It's not restorative. It's just the least painful part of the day. And let's not forget the smell. Everything reeks. You, the bed, the blanket, the room. The wool has absorbed every odor, smoke, sweat, rot, and the distinct sourness of livestock. You've gone nose blind, mostly, but visitors will recoil the moment they step inside. You know because you've seen them do it. It's just another humiliation you've learned to ignore. Privacy is non-existent. You share your sleeping space with family members, animals, and insects. Someone is always snoring, coughing, moaning, or whispering a prayer. You fall asleep listening to the soft rustle of rats in the walls and the not-so-soft grunt of your father trying to roll over on a floor that forgot how to be level. Dreams don't come here. Nightmares do, but they're more documentary than fiction. This is where you spend a third of your life, sprawled on infested straw, buried under a disease-ridden blanket, waiting for the bell that signals another miserable dawn. It doesn't matter how tired you are. The bed will not save you. It will not comfort you. It will betray you every single night. You wake up scratching. Not the casual kind of scratch you might do without thinking, but the desperate, skin-tearing kind that comes from a night spent as an unwilling buffet. Your scalp itches like it's on fire, and your wrists, ankles, and neck are covered in red welts. These aren't mosquito bites. These are the work of fleas, lice, and bedbugs. Your constant, inescapable companions. They live in your hair, your blanket, your clothes, and most insultingly, your flesh. You scratch because there's no other option. There is no ointment, no shampoo, no soap. There is only endurance. Everyone has them. Your mother, your brother, your neighbor, even the priest. It's a collective suffering, an unspoken reality of life in the Middle Ages. Grooming is limited to picking lice out of each other's hair when you have a spare moment. It's done in silence, almost tenderly, like combing for affection. You might use a bone comb if you're lucky, but mostly it's fingers and fingernails, cracking eggs and crunching bodies between them. It makes a pop you'll never forget. Bed bugs crawl from the seams of your blanket, if you could call it that, leaving behind bloody smears from the night's feast. Your arms are dotted with small scabs that never fully heal. The skin behind your knees is raw. You've scratched so hard in your sleep that some bites are open sores now, which is dangerous. Infection is always waiting. One scratch too deep, one cut left unattended, and suddenly, a harmless bug bite turns into a festering wound. There is no antiseptic. There is no Band-Aid. There's only hope that your body wins the fight before rot sets in. And then there are the fleas. They leap, they cling, they breed faster than your thoughts. You pick one off your leg and watch 3 more scurry into the seams of your tunic. You've stopped trying to kill them all. You can't. Instead, you make peace with the idea that your body is not entirely your own. It's a shared space now. Part person, part parasite habitat. You are a walking infestation with a name. Clothing doesn't help. It hides the bugs, warms them, gives them shelter. Even your undertunic, if you have one, has long since become their fortress. Washing your clothes is nearly impossible. Water is precious, and hot water even more so. Soap, if you've even seen it, is a rare greasy lump of animal fat and ash that leaves behind its own kind of grime. You itch through every conversation, every chore, every meal. There is no escape, only brief moments of less discomfort. No one complains. What's the point? You're not special. You're not cursed. You're just alive in 1325, where vermin are not an inconvenience. They're a condition of existence. You are always scratching, always sore, always crawling in your own skin. And this, believe it or not, is considered a normal morning. There's no wardrobe, no closet, no drawers, no options. You own one outfit, and you're already wearing it, because taking it off would mean exposing your skin to the cold, the bugs, and the judgment of everyone else. It's a tunic, shapeless, colorless, and rough, made from coarse wool that's been poorly spun and even more poorly dyed. It rubs your skin raw with every movement. It's not tailored. It's not flattering. It's survival stitched together by someone with just enough skill to make sure it doesn't fall off when you bend over. This tunic has been with you through winters, harvests, rainstorms, and possibly childbirth, if you're unlucky enough to have had that experience already. It hasn't been washed in weeks, maybe months, maybe ever. The scent is something between mildew, sour milk, and despair. You've gotten used to it, which is both horrifying and necessary. Everyone smells this way. If you catch a whiff of fresh air, it's probably a sign that someone's died and their body's been removed. Underneath, if you're lucky, there's a linen undertunic. If not, then it's just your skin pressed directly against the wool, which is a sensation not unlike being hugged by a cactus. Underwear, as you think of it, doesn't exist. Some people wear a loincloth or a rag if they can spare the fabric, but that luxury is often sacrificed to patch something else, like the holes under your armpits, which now function as both air vents and entry points for more fleas. Your clothes are stiff, not because of starch or structure, but because they are saturated with sweat, smoke, animal hair, and the kind of grime that time forgets. They don't bend so much as creak. The elbows are permanently misshapen from resting them on rough wood. The hem is crusted with mud that never seems to fully dry, even in summer. And don't even ask about the sleeves. They've become so ingrained with soot from the hearth that they're basically flammable. Shoes, if you have them, are scraps of untreated leather wrapped around your feet and tied with strips of cloth or string. They offer no protection, no padding, and they soak through instantly when it rains. Most people just go barefoot, and you probably will too by mid-morning, when the blisters start to bubble. There's no such thing as changing into something more comfortable. This is the comfortable. This is what you wear to work, to eat, to sleep, to pray, and eventually, to die in. The fabric knows your body better than you do. It remembers every wound, every sweat-drenched summer, every frost-bitten night. You don't remove it. You molt it, maybe once a year, when the lice population gets so bad, it starts to move the tunic without your help. This is not fashion. This is fabric as endurance. Your itchy, filthy uniform doesn't protect you. It just binds you to the unending rhythm of medieval survival. Nature calls, and in 1325, it doesn't ask politely. There's no porcelain throne, no flush handle, no private little room with a scented candle and some soft jazz. In fact, there's no privacy at all. When it comes time to relieve yourself, you're facing the most dreaded ritual of medieval life, using the toilet, which, spoiler alert, is a concept still in the distant future. You get up from your scratchy straw bed, brush off a few fleas, and head toward the back of your hovel, where a wooden bucket waits like a cruel joke. It's already half full because your uncle had a rough night after eating bad cabbage, and the smell is eye-watering. A thick wall of ammonia and decay that makes you gag every single time. Still, it's that or squat outside in the mud and hope the neighbors aren't watching. Once you've done your business, you're faced with another charming dilemma: disposal. If you live in a town, you simply throw it into the street. Really, that's the system. Open the shutters, shout, "Gardez-vous," a bastardized French warning that means, "Look out below," and dump. That's it. No sewer system, no sanitation crew, just human waste flowing freely through the alleys. The street becomes a river of filth, a slurry of excrement, rotting animal parts, and every possible fluid you can imagine. And quite a few you'd rather not. The smell clings to your nose like bad news. You never really get used to it. You just stop reacting. Until it rains, and then the entire town turns into a swamp of ankle-deep disease. In some towns, there are public latrines. Don't get your hopes up. These are essentially long benches with holes carved into them, suspended over pits or flowing ditches. There's no privacy, no separation. You sit shoulder to shoulder with strangers, trying not to make eye contact as you both pretend you're somewhere else. There's no ventilation, and the walls are often slimy with condensation, and who knows what else. You don't linger. You go. You get out, and you try not to breathe. And toilet paper? Not invented. At least, not for you. You wipe with straw, rags, moss, your hand if you're desperate, and you will be desperate. Some folks use wool scraps if they're feeling extravagant, but that's a rarity. Sometimes people use nothing at all, which helps explain why no one's shaking hands, and why the communal soup always tastes faintly of regret. If you live in a castle, things are only slightly better. You might have access to a guardrobe, a hole in the wall that drops your waist directly into the moat. Sounds convenient, until you realize the moat is also where the enemy might swim up to sneak inside. Yes, really. People have died from getting ambushed in the latrine. So, when nature calls in the Middle Ages, it doesn't just interrupt your day, it humiliates you. You're not stepping into a bathroom, You're stepping into a war zone of smells, disease, and public shame. And remember, you'll be back here again tomorrow, and the day after that, every single day. If you think things improve when you move up the social ladder, think again. Even in the so-called higher circles of medieval life, using the bathroom remains a public performance of discomfort and degradation. In castles, where the nobility resides in cold stone walls and drafty towers, plumbing is still medieval in every sense of the word. Primitive, exposed, and dangerously flawed. The best you can hope for is a guardrail, which is a fancy term for a hole in the wall, literally. A narrow opening cut into the outer wall of the castle with a plank to squat on, maybe a wooden seat if the builder was feeling generous. Your waist drops straight down into a pit, or if the castle has a moat, directly into the water. Out of sight, out of mind, until the summer heat rolls in and the stench rises like a curse. Worse still, this waste chute is a known vulnerability. Enemies have been known to scale castle walls and sneak in through these very shafts, breaking into your stronghold by way of the latrine. So while you're crouched over a freezing, drafty hole, doing your best not to fall in or freeze solid, you also have to wonder if someone with a dagger might be climbing up the very pipe your waist just slid down. There's no lock, no door, and definitely no peace. In town, the situation is somehow even more public. Most people use chamber pots, small buckets kept under beds or benches, to collect waste during the night. In the morning, these are dumped into the streets, adding to the slow-moving sludge that winds through town like a lazy, malevolent stream. If you're a servant or poor townsfolk, you might be tasked with carrying these brimming buckets through narrow, crowded alleys to dump them into larger cesspits, or worse, rivers that are also used to wash clothes and fetch drinking water. You have to shout warnings as you pour, "Gardyloo," or something similar, which barely gives passers-by a chance to dodge the splash zone. Public latrines exist, yes, but they are no relief. They're communal by design, long rows of holes carved over pits, often in open sheds with zero privacy. The smell is unbearable, the floor slick with filth, and the air choked with flies. You're surrounded by others, most of whom are also trying to finish up quickly before the worst happens, like falling in. It's not a rare event. People have drowned in cesspits. Children, drunkards, the elderly, gone in seconds, swallowed by a hole they thought they knew. And then there's the matter of waste collection, or rather, the lack of it. Cities like London and Paris developed night soil men who would scoop out cesspits under the cover of darkness and cart away human excrement for disposal. But these men were few, their work dangerous, and their success inconsistent. Often the pits overflowed, streets flooded, walls buckled, disease followed. To relieve yourself in the medieval world is to flirt with disaster. There is no privacy, no dignity, and absolutely no safety. Public sanitation isn't a system, it's an open wound, oozing through every alley and castle corridor alike. You don't just go to the toilet in medieval times, you survive it, if you're lucky. Morning brings no comfort, no indulgent rituals of hot coffee or buttered toast. There's no scent of sizzling bacon, no crackle of frying eggs. In the medieval world, breakfast is not a meal, it's a formality, a grim and joyless exercise in eating, simply because your body requires fuel to keep laboring through the misery of the day. You crouch near the hearth, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, and reach for your bowl. It's wooden, roughly carved, and stained from years of use and neglect. Inside is the same thing that was inside yesterday, and the day before, and likely every day since you were old enough to hold a spoon. pottage. Pottage is not soup, it's not stew, it's a sludge. A congealed beige-brown mass of grains, root vegetables, and the occasional bean, if you're lucky. There's no recipe. Ingredients are tossed in based on what's available, which usually means whatever didn't rot overnight. If someone brought back a turnip, congratulations. Today's batch will have that faint bitterness layered in. But mostly, it tastes like boiled dirt with a hint of onion. The pot itself has never been scrubbed, only topped off day after day. The crust around the rim is older than you. Alongside the bowl is a piece of bread, if you can call it that. It's dense, stale, and grayish in color, made from barley or rye flour bulked up with whatever filler is available. Ground up acorns, sawdust, even powdered bark. Wheat is for the nobility. You get what's left behind after the miller's family has taken their cut. This bread doesn't crumble, it shatters. Your teeth, already loose and aching, throb with each bite. You don't chew so much as wrestle it into submission. Butter is a luxury. Cheese, a memory. Honey, a myth. The portion is small, never enough to satisfy. You eat because not eating means fainting later, and fainting means you'll fall behind in your work, and falling behind means someone else takes your share. Hunger is a quiet constant, like a second pulse. It's not a dramatic, cinematic starvation, just the low, grinding kind that gnaws at your belly and makes your head feel foggy by midday. There's no satisfaction, no fullness, just the bare minimum required to keep walking and lifting and digging until sunset. Sometimes there's weak ale to drink, or thin milk if the cow hasn't gone dry. Water is risky, often teeming with bacteria, and worse. So you sip beer with your breakfast, flat, cloudy, and low in alcohol, but safe enough to avoid dysentery. Children drink it too, not because anyone thinks it's good for them, but because it won't kill them, immediately anyway. Breakfast in the Middle Ages isn't a pause for comfort. It's a grim obligation, a spoonful of sustenance in a bowl that tastes like history and regret. You don't savor it, you finish it, and then you get back to surviving. You're thirsty, but water is off the table, not because it's unavailable. There's a stream nearby, rain barrels outside the hut, maybe even a village well, but because it might kill you. Water in the Middle Ages is often less a life source and more a delivery system for disease. It looks clear. It might even taste fresh. But upstream someone has probably emptied a chamber pot into it. Or a dead animal is rotting in it. Or someone's been washing linens fouled with illness. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid. These aren't distant threats. They're your neighbors, waiting patiently in every sip. So, what do you drink? Ale. Weak, flat, lukewarm ale. And you drink it all day. So do your children. It's called small beer, and it's brewed not for flavor or pleasure, but for safety. The brewing process involves boiling the water, which kills off some of the deadly pathogens. The result is a cloudy, mildly fermented liquid that has just enough alcohol to prevent bacterial growth, but not enough to make you drunk, unless you drink it by the gallon, which many people do, because it's all there is. You start your day with it, you wash your pottage down with it, and you use it to clean your teeth, such as they are. Babies are weaned onto it. Toddlers sip it from the same wooden cup as their parents. It's not a rite of passage. It's a necessity. The beer isn't filtered. It isn't chilled. It isn't carbonated. It doesn't come in a stein or a bottle or with a thick, frothy head. It tastes like warm, soggy bread strained through a barn floor. There are chunks in it. You pretend not to notice. The grains are whatever was available. Barley, oats, rye, maybe wheat if someone misallocated a lord's ration. Hops are rare. Yeast is unpredictable. It's less a beverage and more a liquid compromise with nature. But even this precaution isn't foolproof. If the fermentation goes wrong, the beer spoils. If the barrels grow mold, you drink it anyway. You can't afford to waste it. You can't even afford to question it. Stomach cramps are just a part of life. So is diarrhea. You learn to ignore the gurgles, the rumblings, the sudden need to dash to the bucket behind the house, if you're lucky enough to make it there in time. You don't talk about it. You just keep drinking. There's a strange irony in all this. In a world where life is already short and cruel, where children die young and wounds fester into fatal infections, the one thing keeping everyone alive is a bucket of sour beer that no one actually wants to drink. It's not a treat. It's not a vice. It's your hydration plan. Beer isn't optional in the Middle Ages. It's survival. Tepid, bitter, and shared from the same cup that's been passed around since last winter. So you raise your mug, not in celebration, but in resignation. Cheers to staying alive for one more grimy, uncomfortable, lice-ridden day. The smell hits you before anything else. Not the sharp reek of a single offense, but a dense, layered fog of humanity that clings to every surface, every garment, every breath. It's in the walls, in the straw, in the very air itself. And you're part of it. You stink. Everyone does. Not in a forgot deodorant way. In a haven't bathed since the last plague scare way. And that was months ago, maybe longer. Bathing, in the modern sense, just doesn't happen. There's no tub in your home, no running water, no soap in the cabinet, because there is no cabinet. And even if you had those things, you wouldn't use them often. In the Middle Ages, full-body bathing is seen as dangerous. Not just impractical, dangerous. The prevailing wisdom says that opening your pores with warm water allows sickness to seep in. Water, people believe, carries disease not just in the gut, but straight through the skin. So to stay healthy, you stay filthy. That doesn't mean people never clean themselves. They splash water on their faces, wipe down their hands, scrub dirt from under their nails with knives or sticks. But those are quick, functional actions, done with cold water and without much ceremony. Communal bathhouses exist in some towns, but their reputations are questionable at best. They're breeding grounds for gossip, scandal, and sometimes sex, which is why the church often condemns them and tries to shut them down. Cleanliness, in their eyes, can lead to moral filth. Better to stink and be pious. Soap, when you can get it, is a pungent slab of animal fat and ash. It scours the skin like sandpaper and leaves behind a residue that's only slightly less offensive than what you started with. It's expensive, time-consuming to make, and often saved for washing clothes or treating wounds rather than personal hygiene. As for your clothes, they're part of the problem. Your one outfit, worn day after day, is saturated with sweat, smoke, and mildew. It traps every odor your body emits and holds onto it, like a secret. Your armpits are raw from the friction. Your scalp is a battlefield of oil, lice, and scabs. And there's no escape from your own scent, because everyone else smells the same, or worse. Odor becomes social glue. You can tell who just came back from mucking the pig pen, who's had a stomach illness, who's been sleeping too close to the fire. Your nose learns to decode layers of sweat, rot, and wool. But none of it registers as shocking. The human body, untamed and unwashed, becomes just another texture in the sensory soup of daily life. Perfume? Unthinkable. Scented anything? Out of reach. Flowers wilt too quickly. and herbs are for the cooking pot or the apothecary. You carry your stench like a second skin, invisible but omnipresent. So yes, you stink, and so does your neighbor. So does the priest, the merchant, the blacksmith, the midwife. The whole world is rank with the sour, stubborn odor of survival. You don't mask it. You don't apologize for it. You breathe it in and move on. Because in 1325, hygiene isn't a virtue, it's a superstition, and one most people don't dare to challenge. You'd think water, the thing that keeps life going, would be your friend. But here in 1325, water is not your salvation. It's your silent executioner. It doesn't announce itself with a sour taste or a strange color. It looks clear, maybe even inviting, especially on a hot day after hours in the fields. But what you can't see is what will kill you. Every drop from the village stream, the communal well, or the runoff barrel behind your house carries with it the full microbial arsenal of the medieval world. E. coli, typhoid, cholera, parasites with names you'll never hear, because you'll be dead before anyone figures out what they are. Your local water source is shared, not just by people, but by animals, refuse, and the occasional corpse. You might draw water from a shallow river that also serves as the town's laundry, toilet, garbage pit, and sometimes emergency burial ground. Upstream, a cow just died, and no one had the strength to drag it out. The body bloats in the sun, leaking into the current. The smell is unbearable, but not enough to make people stop using it. What choice do they have? Rainwater? That's an option if you can collect it. But it's stored in open barrels, exposed to bird droppings, insect eggs, rotting leaves, and whatever blows in with the wind. A stagnant film forms over the top within days, but you don't skim it off. You drink around it. If you're lucky, someone once told you to boil it. But that takes fuel, which takes money or labor, and both are in short supply. Most people can't spare the time or firewood, so they drink it straight, and they suffer. The symptoms don't always come right away. Maybe you feel a little dizzy. Your stomach gurgles in an unfamiliar way. Then the cramps start, then the vomiting, then the diarrhea. And in a world without electrolytes, antibiotics, or IV drips, that spiral doesn't end with a sick day in bed. It ends with dehydration, a fevered haze, and a shallow grave near the churchyard, if there's still space to dig one. No one understands why this happens. They blame it on bad air, on imbalanced humors, on divine punishment for sins. But no one suspects the clear liquid in their wooden cup. And why would they? Water is supposed to give life, not take it. But the Middle Ages doesn't deal in poetic contradictions. It deals in hard, ugly ones. Water is tainted, always. And unless it's been turned into beer or wine, you're gambling with every swallow. Children are the most vulnerable. Their tiny bodies can't handle the assault. Infant mortality rates are sky high, and no one connects the dots between the teething baby and the rinse bucket used to wash cloth diapers. You try not to think about it. You drink what's in front of you and pray. Or you drink the ale, flat, sour, warm, but marginally safer. In 1325, thirst isn't just uncomfortable, it's terrifying, because water doesn't need to rage or flood to destroy you. It only needs to be still and waiting. You open your mouth in 1325, and the war inside is already lost. Your teeth, what's left of them, are cracked, yellow, and shifting in their sockets, like deserters abandoning a battlefield. There is no toothbrush, no floss, no toothpaste, not even a vague concept of oral hygiene. Cleaning your mouth means swishing water, if you're lucky, or chewing on a twig and hoping for the best. And most days, No one even bothers with that. Why would they? You're going to die young anyway. Your smile isn't for beauty or health. It's just another part of your body slowly decaying in real time. By your mid-20s, you've probably lost several teeth. The ones still in place are blackened and pitted, softened by years of gritty bread and acidic ale. Cavities don't get filled. They get ignored until they turn into infections. Then your gums swell, your jaw throbs, and your breath could knock over a horse. Abscesses are common, and they're deadly. One festering pocket of pus in your jaw can lead to blood poisoning. There are no antibiotics, no emergency dental appointments, just a priest, a candle, and maybe a whisper of regret that you didn't die from something quicker. Sugar for now is rare, used mostly by the wealthy as a status symbol. But that doesn't mean your diet is easy on your enamel. Bread is made with coarse flour, often mixed with bits of sand or stone from poorly milled grain. Every bite wears down your molars like sandpaper. And it's not like you're eating soft fruit and vegetables every day. Most of your meals are hard, fibrous, and either too salty or slightly rotten. Your teeth are punished at every meal, and they have no hope of recovery. Toothaches are a way of life. You live with them, sleep with them, try to work through them. There's no Tylenol, no numbing gel, no trip to the pharmacy. When the pain becomes unbearable, you do the only thing left. You rip the tooth out. Or someone else does. Maybe the village blacksmith. Maybe your neighbor with a pair of tongs and a strong arm. If you're lucky, they'll get it on the first try. If not, they'll just keep yanking. There's no anesthesia. You scream into a piece of wood or bite down on a leather strap, assuming the tooth you're removing isn't the one doing the biting. Barber surgeons, the men who cut hair and bleed people for a living, sometimes pull teeth too. They don't sterilize tools. They don't understand infection. They do it in the back of a smoky tavern or in the market square with a small crowd watching. Blood gushes. Bits of jaw might come out. You might pass out from the pain or the blood loss or both. And when the fever sets in, you pray it's not sepsis, because once that hits, you don't get better. You die. All because of a tooth. Just a tooth. In 1325, your mouth isn't part of your health. It's a ticking time bomb, and you don't get to decide when it goes off. You're sick. Maybe it's a fever. Maybe it's a wound that's turned a strange color. Maybe your stomach's twisting like a knotted rope. In the 21st century, you'd be on the phone to a doctor, taking antibiotics within the hour. In 1325, your options are far grimmer. The healer arrives, a barber surgeon, a local wise woman, or a robed man trained in theology more than biology. And before you even explain your symptoms, they've already made up their mind. Your humors are out of balance. Medicine in the Middle Ages isn't medicine as we know it. It's a system of belief rooted in ancient texts and superstition. Your body, according to the dominant theory, is governed by 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Health comes from balance. Illness, that's imbalance. Fever, too much blood. Melancholy, too much black bile. Coughing, clearly phlegm. There are no germs, no viruses, no bacteria. Germ theory won't exist for centuries. Disease, as far as anyone can tell, comes from bad air, celestial misalignment, sin, or God's disapproval. The cure? Often worse than the illness. Bloodletting is the go-to treatment for nearly everything. You're weak and pale? Let's take a pint of blood just to be sure. They'll open a vein in your arm with a dull knife, or apply leeches, fat, squirming parasites that drink until they fall off. You lie there as the blood pools in a dish, hoping your headache goes away before consciousness does. Infection? That's just more bad humors. They'll bleed you again tomorrow. Surgical procedures are crude and almost always fatal. There's no anesthesia, no sanitation, and no understanding of internal anatomy beyond what ancient Roman texts guessed at. Surgery is done on the kitchen table or the floor of the church. Tools are reused without cleaning. Hands are unwashed, and outcomes are usually determined by whether your body can survive the trauma, not the disease. If your illness lingers, spiritual treatment is added to the regimen. You're encouraged to confess your sins, say prayers, light candles. Maybe your sickness is divine punishment for impure thoughts, or failing to fast properly during Lent. The priest might come to your bedside to administer last rites, even if you're not dead yet. He's hedging his bets. So are you. Herbal remedies are used, but with inconsistent knowledge and results. You might be given a poultice of moldy bread and pig fat, or a drink made from ground beetles and old wine. If your condition improves, the healer is praised. If you die, it was simply God's will. No one questions the method, because no one knows any better. And so you lie there, pale and sweating, drained of blood, covered in leeches, your belly cramping from a mystery tonic. You haven't eaten in days. You're cold, terrified, and alone. You called for help. What you got was a theology lecture, a minor exorcism, and a knife. In 1325, your doctor is often indistinguishable from your executioner. You scrape your knee on a rock. It seems minor, just a small gash, a streak of blood and dirt. In a modern world, you'd rinse it, bandage it, maybe put on some antibiotic ointment, and forget about it. In 1325, this is the beginning of a slow, dangerous decline, possibly the prelude to your funeral. Because here, wounds don't heal. They fester, they rot, and they kill. There's no understanding of bacteria, no concept of sterility. A cut is treated with whatever's on hand: mud, spit, maybe a rag that's been used 3 times this week and dried over the hearth. The idea is to draw out the bad humors or let the body rebalance itself. But no one knows what they're doing. There's no antiseptic, no gauze, and no safe way to clean a wound. Boiling water might be used if someone's desperate or thoughtful, but more often it's just cold water from the stream, which could contain worse threats than the injury itself. If you're lucky, the wound scabs over, itches, and fades. But luck is rare. More likely, it reddens, swells, begins to pulse with heat and pain. The skin around it darkens. Pus gathers. It starts to smell, sweet and sickly, the unmistakable scent of infection. You try to ignore it. There's work to do. You wrap it in cloth and keep going. Every step sends a jolt of pain through your limb. You're limping now. By day 3, you have a fever. By day 5, you can't stand. The wound has gone black at the edges. There are no antibiotics, no miracle cures. Infections spread unchecked. If you're fortunate enough to live near a surgeon, or at least someone with a sharp knife and strong stomach, they might try to drain the abscess or cut away the infected flesh. There's no anesthesia. You scream until your voice breaks, or you pass out. And even then, the wound rarely closes cleanly. If the rot goes deep enough, amputation becomes the only option. Without painkillers or knowledge of shock, it's a brutal, agonizing process. Many don't survive the cutting. Fewer survive the recovery. And if it's not your leg, but your hand, you lose the ability to work, to feed yourself, to contribute. That might as well be a death sentence. You become a burden, a mouth to feed, with no hands to earn. And society has little patience for the weak. Mercy is rare. People die quietly in corners, forgotten. This is the reality of injury in the Middle Ages. There are no small wounds. A splinter can turn septic. A blister from your hoe becomes a swollen ulcer. A scratch from a cat turns into a raging infection. And death doesn't come quickly. It lingers. You feel your body betraying you over days, even weeks. The pain becomes a constant companion, gnawing at your strength, your hope, your mind. In 1325, your skin is not protection. It's a fragile barrier between life and the world's endless bacteria-laced horrors. And once it's breached, your countdown has already begun. The rooster doesn't wake you up. The stiffness in your joints does. Your body, worn and used like a blunt tool, begins each day in protest. But there's no time to listen. The sun is rising, and with it, the work begins. It doesn't matter if you're sore, sick, or haven't eaten properly in days. In 1325, labor isn't just a duty, it's survival, and it never, ever stops. There is no weekend. Sunday might be a day of rest in theory, but in reality, it's often spent catching up on chores that piled up while you were laboring 6 days straight. And those 6 days? They stretch from first light until it's too dark to see your own hands. There's no such thing as a shift. The only punch clock is the sun itself. And if you stop working before it sets, you better have a fever or a funeral to justify it. Your hands grip a wooden hoe, rough and splintered, worn down by years of digging, sowing, and breaking earth that never seems to soften. The soil is rocky and reluctant. Your tools are basic, barely more than shaped sticks and rusted iron. Oxen help, if you're lucky enough to work land that has them. But most likely, it's just you, your family, and a back that stopped straightening properly a decade ago. You bend and lift and sweat and ache, not for profit, but for food. Food that you might not even get to keep, because the land you're working isn't yours. It belongs to a lord, a noble, someone who probably doesn't even know your name. You're a serf, bound to the estate like livestock with thumbs. A portion of everything you grow, your wheat, your eggs, your hard-earned produce, goes straight to him. The best of it, too. What's left is yours to stretch as far as it can go. If there's a bad harvest, you tighten your belt. If there's a famine, you starve. There's no such thing as sick leave. If you're limping, coughing, or shaking with fever, you still work. Because the harvest won't wait, and your Lord certainly won't. A broken bone isn't a reason to rest. It's a reason to be replaced. There's always someone younger, hungrier, more desperate. So you grit your teeth, ignore the blisters that have become calluses, and keep digging. Your nails are black with dirt. Your knees are bruised from planting. Your spine feels like it's curving in on itself. But you keep going. And it's not just field work. If you're a woman, your day doesn't end when the sun dips below the horizon. You carry water, cook gruel, mend clothes, tend to animals, care for children, spin wool, clean the hut. The work just shifts location, from field to fire, from soil to soot. Rest is a dream you remember vaguely from childhood. Now, it's just something other people might have. This is life. You don't rise in station. You don't plan for retirement. You simply keep going until your body gives out. Because in the Middle Ages, the only thing more exhausting than the labor is the knowledge that it will never, ever end. There's nothing sleek or ergonomic about the tools of 1325. They don't help you work. They make you work harder. Your plow isn't a machine. It's a wooden frame barely held together with rusted nails and bound leather, dragged by an ox that's as tired and malnourished as you are. The blade is iron, chipped and dull, barely able to cut through the stubborn earth. You have to lean into it with your whole body, shoulder to wood, as the animal groans and stumbles forward. Every inch of soil feels like a battle you're losing. Your hoe is a splintered stick with a jagged bit of metal jammed into one end. It's more a suggestion of a tool than an actual one. The handles are too short, so you hunch. You always hunch. Your back bends every day, from dawn to dusk, and slowly begins to forget how to straighten. By 30, you're twisted like a bow, your spine curved in a way that's no longer reversible. Your knees crunch when you walk. Your hands are so swollen and calloused that you can't feel with your fingertips anymore, but you keep using them, because you have to. The sickle is sharp enough to cut wheat, but not without effort. Every swing sends a jolt through your wrist, elbow, and shoulder. Repetition wears your joints down faster than time. There are no gloves, no padding, no safety gear. You bleed often. Blisters come and go. Sometimes a tool slips and slices your leg or your palm. You wrap it in cloth and keep going. Infection is a risk, but stopping is not an option. Even the oxen are a kind of tool, and they break too. They're slow, stubborn, and prone to collapse. You drive them with a stick, shouting and tugging, watching their ribs shift under thin, sweat-matted skin. They are your labor partners, but they're also proof of your place in the world. Always behind, always pushing, always exhausted. When one dies, you mourn, not because you loved it, but because now you have to carry the plow yourself. The repetition of your tasks carves your body into a shape suited only for suffering. There's no stretching, no physical therapy, no warm-up before lifting stones or swinging axes. You simply do it, over and over again. Your joints stiffen. Your fingers twist with arthritis before you even know the word for it. Your feet are flat from years of barefoot labor on hard, uneven ground. Your hips ache in the cold. Your neck barely turns. Chronic pain doesn't get a name. It gets silence. There's no retirement, no period of rest, no transition into easier duties. You work until your tools outlast you, or until you become one of them. Bent, broken, left leaning against a wall until someone else needs you. In the Middle Ages, the tools don't just shape the land. They shape the people who wield them, and they do so with ruthless, unrelenting cruelty. If you're a woman in 1325, you don't just work. You orbit the entire household like an exhausted planet, spinning from task to task, while everyone else depends on your gravity. You rise before the sun, same as the men, but your labor doesn't end in the fields. It starts there and continues long after your husband has collapsed by the fire. In a world where strength is measured by what you endure in silence, medieval women carry the weight of an entire existence on their backs, and they do it with blistered hands and swollen feet. You work the fields beside the men, hoe in hand, shoulders bent, sweat running down your spine in thick, sticky rivers. You dig, sow, harvest, weed, whatever the season demands. There's no distinction between men's work and women's work when survival's on the line. If it needs doing, you do it. And when the fieldwork is done, the second shift begins. You return to the hovel, children clinging to your skirt, and begin the day's domestic gauntlet. There's water to fetch, several trips a day, carrying sloshing wooden buckets from the well or the stream, no matter the distance or the weather. There's grain to grind, a back-breaking process that turns into hours of kneeling over a stone slab, twisting your body into repetitive strain just to make the flour for a single coarse loaf of bread. You cook, if there's anything to cook. You patch clothes, if there's cloth to patch. You spin wool by hand, twist thread, weave, scrub, sweep, soothe, scold. You stir pottage, chase off rats, and tend to animals in the same space you're expected to give birth in. And birth, God help you, is a third job entirely. There's no hospital, no sanitation, no medicine. Just you, a few women, maybe a midwife if you're lucky, kneeling in straw, praying you survive. The pain is unimaginable. The risk of death is high. And if you do survive, you're expected to return to full duties almost immediately, bleeding, shaking, cradling a newborn while stirring porridge and elbowing your way through daily chores. You don't get maternity leave. You don't get any kind of leave. You just keep going. There's no praise, no recognition. Your labor is invisible, expected. You are the gears inside the machine of medieval life, rarely seen, always spinning. If you speak out, you risk being labeled troublesome, or worse, unnatural. If you falter, everything else does too. And yet no one writes songs about you. No one builds statues for women who carried the village on their back while nursing infants with cracked, frozen fingers. You are the first to rise and the last to sleep. You are the seamstress, the cook, the nurse, the farmer, the caretaker, the midwife, the cleaner, the wife, the mother, the mule. In a world that values obedience over fairness, women aren't just participants in medieval society. They are the silent foundation. Without them, it all collapses. And yet, somehow, they are the ones expected never to break. In 1325, childhood ends the moment you can carry a bucket, or lift a stick, or walk without falling over. There are no lullabies here, no playgrounds, no storybooks to curl up with at night. Being a child doesn't mean being cared for. It means being conscripted early into the daily war for survival. By the age of 5, you're not a toddler anymore. You're a worker, a responsibility, and another pair of small, aching hands in a world that demands everything from everyone, no matter how small. You rise when the rest of the family does, to the clang of the village bell, or the soft creak of your mother's bones as she moves about the hut. You don't have your own bed. You sleep crammed beside siblings, cousins, sometimes animals, on a mattress that smells like mildew and mold. Your stomach grumbles, but you eat what you're given, usually pottage and stale bread, just enough to get you through another day without collapsing. Then the chores begin. You carry water in pots too large for your hands, stumbling over uneven dirt paths while trying not to spill. You collect firewood, broken sticks and dead branches, and drag them home in bundles larger than your torso. You chase chickens. You weed gardens. You pick stones out of fields. You scare crows. You sweep ash. You feed the pig. You feed your siblings. You are part of the labor force, whether your fingers have stopped growing or not. There's no school. Unless you're noble or destined for the church, no one teaches you to read or write. Letters and numbers are tools for the rich. Your lessons are in fire and soil, sweat and obedience. You learn how to gut a fish before you know how to spell your name. You know what fever smells like. You know that if the crop fails, people will starve, including you. There are no toys, unless you count bones and rocks. Maybe someone carves you a spinning top, or you find a stick that sort of looks like a sword. But play is a brief luxury, stolen moments between real work. You don't play house, you clean it. You don't play farming, you plant real seeds with blistered hands. Every game you know is a shadow of a chore. You laugh because you're still a child. But even your laughter is hoarse with dust. Sickness hits hard, and when it comes, you keep working, unless you're too weak to stand. Then you lie on a straw mat in the corner and hope the fever breaks before your body does. Half of your friends won't make it to adulthood. You already know this, even if you don't understand why. You've seen it. The smaller graves, the hushed conversations, the way mothers stare at the floor for days afterward. In the Middle Ages, childhood isn't protected, it's spent. You give it away in pieces, hand it over to the land, the family, the seasons, until one day, you're not a child anymore. You're just tired, and still working. Forget paychecks, forget savings. In 1325, the economy of a village isn't built on prosperity. It's built on desperation, and it runs on barter, obligation, and the ever-present fear of failure. There's no money in your pocket because you probably don't have a pocket. And if you do, it's holding something like an onion, a bone needle, or a fragment of stale bread, not coin. Most peasants never see real currency. What they have is what they grow, make, or raise, and what they can trade with their equally struggling neighbors. Your wealth is measured in chickens, eggs, and sacks of grain. In the rare case you have a surplus, you might trade a few turnips for a hunk of smoked fish, or swap wool for a pair of worn-out boots. But trade isn't casual or convenient. It's delicate. Everyone around you is just barely holding on. If your cow dries up or your barley spoils, there's no insurance. You fall behind. If your neighbor breaks a leg and can't work, he might ask you to help with his plowing. If you say no, it might mean he doesn't make it through winter. If you say yes, your own work suffers. Either way, someone loses. Over it all looms the Lord, the landowner, the man who owns everything, including the dirt under your feet. You don't work for yourself, you work for him. A portion of your crops, your livestock, your wool, your firewood. It all goes to the manor first. And it's not optional. It's not rent in the way we think of rent. It's feudal obligation. It's law. If you don't deliver your dues, the bailiff shows up. Maybe he takes your tools. Maybe your ox. Maybe your child ends up as labor on the manor farm. Maybe you're cast off your land entirely. You don't negotiate. You bow your head and hope what you've scraped together is enough. There's no margin for error. A storm destroys your thatched roof. You're exposed to cold and illness. A bad harvest? You ration what little you have and pray. Rats, mold, early frost, or a greedy tax collector can collapse your entire year of labor. One mistake, one slice of bad luck, and the entire system tightens like a noose. You might sell off your extra clothes, your tools, even your children's future, apprenticing them away in exchange for bread or protection. And there's always the church. It demands its tithe, 10% of everything you produce. Not 10% of your surplus, 10% of everything. That means your best chicken, your freshest loaf, your cleanest wool. You give it up, and then watch the priest walk back to his home with food your family won't eat. There's no upward mobility, no retirement, no investment. The village economy isn't a ladder. It's a treadmill with knives on the belt. You run just to stay alive. And if you stumble, even a little, there's no safety net, just the cold, hard ground and the knowledge that next year will only be harder. Winter in 1325 doesn't arrive with festive songs or cozy sweaters. It comes like a slow, suffocating blanket of death, creeping in through every crack in your wooden hovel and settling in your bones. The temperature drops, and your world shrinks to the size of a single room, one that doesn't keep the cold out, but traps it inside like a second skin. There is no insulation. The walls are made of timber and mud, with gaps wide enough to let in the wind and anything else that dares to crawl through. You feel the cold in your lungs, in your teeth, in the marrow of your fingers. Every breath fogs the air like smoke, and the air never warms. Your clothing offers little protection. You have one tunic, maybe two if you're fortunate. It's made of coarse wool, permanently damp from the weather and your own sweat. Drying it means hanging it by the hearth, but the hearth is barely lit. Firewood is scarce, more valuable than gold when the frost comes early. Gathering it from the forest might be illegal, depending on whose land it technically is. People have been hanged for collecting sticks that belonged, by law, to the Lord. So you burn what you can. Straw, old rags, even dried animal dung if necessary. It smokes and stings your eyes, but offers just enough warmth to justify the choking air. At night, your family huddles together like livestock, pressed body to body under a filthy wool blanket, heavy with grease, dirt, and last year's mildew. There's no real bed, just straw on the ground that might be frozen through. The mattress doesn't insulate. It draws the cold up into you like a sponge. Rats scurry across your legs. Fleas bite your neck. You can't remember what it felt like to sleep without shivering. You wake each morning unsure if your toes will still be pink or if black has started to creep in. Frostbite isn't diagnosed. It's discovered after it's too late to do anything but pray or cut. Water freezes in the bucket by the door. Your joints stiffen so badly you can barely move in the morning. Arthritis sets in early, not as a medical condition, but as an accepted part of aging. You're 25, and your hands look 60. The roof might leak snowmelt or collapse entirely under weight. You pile rags under the door to block the draft, but the wind still finds its way through. It always does. Food becomes scarcer. Whatever you stored in the fall dwindles. Your belly shrinks from hunger, but your body burns through whatever it has left just to keep your core warm. Colds become chest infections. Coughs become fatal. One sniffle in December might mean a funeral by January. And yet you still work, still feed animals, still trudge to the well with your skin cracking open from the dry air and biting wind. Winter doesn't kill you with drama. It kills you with time. Slowly, quietly, inch by inch. And there's nothing romantic about it. Just the dull, aching hope that when the thaw finally comes, you'll still be alive to feel it. If winter is slow suffocation, summer is slow roasting. You'd think the rising sun might bring relief after months of freezing. But in 1325, the seasons don't offer balance, just different flavors of misery. The moment the days grow long, your home, built from wattle and daub, transforms into an oven. The sun bakes the mud walls until the air inside turns stagnant and thick. There's no cross breeze, no open windows, no glass even. Just cloth-covered gaps that trap heat and sweat and stink like a simmering stew of human effort. You sweat constantly. Not the clean, glistening kind you see in movies, but the kind that soaks through your only tunic until it sticks to your back like a second, damp skin. The wool itches more when it's wet, and you itch with it. Your armpits are raw. Your thighs chafe. Your scalp burns under a layer of grease, oil, and crawling insects. Bathing is still rare and suspect. You carry the stink of effort, of toil, of your own body fermenting inside cloth. And no, you can't just strip down. That's scandalous. Nudity is sin, even if it means cooking alive inside your own skin. Modesty rules, even when common sense evaporates with your sweat. You try to sleep, but it's impossible. The night doesn't cool down. The air feels heavier inside the hut than outside, pressing into your lungs, wrapping around your chest like wet burlap. Babies cry. Old people wheeze. The livestock shuffle and grunt, their heat adding to the oppressive fug. There are no fans, no water basins, no relief. You lie there, still, listening to your own heartbeat thud against a pillow made of straw and dirt, praying for a breeze that never comes. Then come the flies, swarms of them, drawn by the smell of bodies, dung, spoiled food, and blood. They land in your eyes, your mouth, your ears. You swat at them constantly, but they always come back. They live in the folds of your clothes, the folds of your skin. Mosquitoes buzz by your head at night, whining in your ears, laying eggs in the stagnant water barrels out back, assuming the birds and mice haven't already fouled them. Every scratch turns into a welt, and every welt risks infection. You still have to work. You plow the fields, bend over rows of crops, carry water, tend to animals. The sun is relentless. There are no hats unless you've fashioned one out of straw, and even then, the heat bakes through it. Sunburn isn't just discomfort, it's a real risk. Peasants with cracked, peeling skin suffer from infections, fevers, and sometimes full-body blistering. And no one calls it heat stroke. No one understands dehydration. If you collapse in the fields, people just say you took a bad turn, and then they keep working, because they have to. Summer in the Middle Ages doesn't offer ease. It offers another battle, against the heat, the rot, the flies, and your own boiling blood. You survive by sweating, by enduring, by suffering quietly beneath layers of itchy wool, while the sun turns your home into a kiln and your body into tinder. And there's no shade from it, only the certainty that when summer ends, something just as brutal will take its place. When the rain comes in 1325, it doesn't just fall gently across fields, like in a storybook. It invades. It soaks and seeps and stains. It turns your already miserable life into a soggy, mold-ridden swamp. Rain in the Middle Ages isn't poetic. It's punishment. And once it starts, it can last for days, sometimes weeks, with no break. The ground turns to sludge. The air becomes heavy with the stink of wet animals and rot. And your world, already precarious, begins to fall apart. Your hut isn't a shelter so much as a suggestion. The thatched roof, woven from straw and wishful thinking, leaks like a broken sieve. You try patching it with old rags, animal hides, or bundles of reeds, but nothing holds. Every night, water drips onto your face as you try to sleep. The straw mattress beneath you slowly becomes a sponge, soaking up rain and sweat and filth until it's a perfect breeding ground for mold. You wake up colder and damper than you went to sleep, with your blanket, also wool, also wet, clinging to you like a soggy corpse. Clothes never dry. There's no chimney to vent the smoke from your pathetic fire. So everything, walls, clothing, your skin, stinks of mildew and wood smoke. You hang garments near the fire in an attempt to dry them, but they just absorb the moisture from the air instead. And when you put them on the next morning, they're cold, heavy, and still damp, sending shivers down your spine and into your bones. Your feet squelch in your shoes, if you own any. If not, your toes dig into icy mud every step you take. You learn to live with the feeling of wetness. You even stop noticing it until the rashes start. Rain turns the narrow, trodden paths of the village into rivers of muck. Human waste, animal dung, rotten food. All of it flows in miniature streams through the village square. You can't avoid it. You wade through it to reach the fields, the well, the church. The mud tries to steal your boots, suck at your feet, and stain your legs to the knees. Children fall in it and emerge streaked in filth. Everyone's legs are a patchwork of cuts, scrapes, and sores that never heal properly in the wet. Everything you touch feels soft and sour. The walls of your home begin to swell. The wooden beams groan under the weight of soaked straw. Mushrooms sprout in the corners. Slugs trail across your table. Rats multiply with the abundance of damp, dark spaces. The food you've stored in corners and clay jars starts to grow fuzz or develop a strange odor. Bread turns slimy. Cheese blooms colors it shouldn't. And you eat it anyway, because what else are you going to do? Rain doesn't stop life. It just makes it harder. You still have to work. Still have to carry water, cook, care for children, feed animals. But now you do it all while dripping, shivering, and aching. There's no warm towel, no dry change of clothes, no clean socks waiting. There's just more rain, more mold, more misery, and the knowledge that when the rot creeps in, it doesn't stop with wood and wool. It finds people too, and it doesn't always let go. Your skin, the barrier that's supposed to protect you, has become the enemy's favorite playground. In 1325, it isn't just the weather or the hunger that breaks you. It's your own flesh turning against you. Every patch of skin is a battlefield, and you are losing the war. One infection, one eruption, one oozing sore at a time. You're almost never clean. Bathing is rare, and when it happens, it's more ceremonial than effective. Your clothes are rarely washed. Your bed is a cesspit of straw, filth, and fleas. Your sweat has nowhere to go. It soaks into rough wool and sits there, day after day, rotting slowly against your skin. And your body pays the price. The constant damp from rain, the endless friction of labor, the inability to dry off. These combine into the perfect storm for skin disease. You don't just itch, you burn. Scabies is rampant. Caused by mites burrowing into your skin, it spreads quickly through shared bedding, clothing, and touch, none of which you can avoid in a single-room home with 8 people sleeping side by side. The itching is relentless, worse at night, when you're already freezing and miserable. You scratch until you bleed. The wounds become sores, then crust over, only to open again. The cycle doesn't end, and you have no salve, no cream, no diagnosis, just raw flesh and sleepless nights. Then there's the fungus, between your toes, under your arms, in places too private to mention. Your clothing, always damp, traps moisture in every crease of your body. You can't dry off, and even if you could, you don't have spare clothes to change into. You learn to live with a persistent, maddening itch that never goes away. Skin peels, cracks, and becomes red and angry. When it flares, it stinks. People talk about the rot as if it's a curse, but really, it's just infection eating away at flesh that was never allowed to breathe. Boils, rashes, ulcers, these are the landmarks of your existence. You feel them forming before they break through the surface, tender, swollen lumps that grow hotter by the day. When they burst, it's a grotesque relief, pus and blood, and the temporary lessening of pressure. But more always return. You don't know why. No one does. Maybe it's bad blood, maybe sin, maybe just part of life. You can't go to a doctor. There is no treatment. The local wise woman might offer you a poultice of moss and clay, or a charm to hang near your bed. But it won't work. Nothing works. You get used to the smell of infection. You get used to the sight of yellow crust along your legs and arms. You get used to hiding the worst of it with sleeves, even though the wool makes it worse. And through it all, you still work, still walk, still try to sleep, because no one stops moving for a rash. Not here, not now. In the Middle Ages, your skin is not armor. It's a liability, a fragile, failing surface that's constantly under siege, and no one is coming to help you defend it. In 1325, shoes aren't something you slip on. They're something you dream about. For most peasants, footwear is a distant luxury, a possession reserved for the rare few who either inherit a pair or scrape together enough trade to get them made. But for you, like for most, the earth is your floor and your feet are your souls. You walk barefoot through every season, across every terrain, and your feet bear the cost in blood, blisters, and rot. At first, it feels like pain. Sharp stones pierce your heel. Thorns jab between your toes. You step on animal bones, jagged bits of wood, even broken pottery in the muck around your home. Your feet bleed, and there is no antiseptic, no soap, no bandage, just more dirt. Cuts fester. Wounds never quite heal. They scab, then crack open again with the next mile, the next field, the next chore. If you get an infection, and you will, you keep walking, because there is no other option. Then comes the disease. Parasites nest in the mud, especially in warmer months. Hookworms slither into your skin unnoticed, burrowing into your bloodstream. Your legs swell, your energy drains, your stomach knots. You don't understand why you feel so weak. No one does. It's just the way things are. Your toenails thicken and yellow. Your heels crack until they bleed. The skin peels in layers like bark off a dying tree. In the colder months, your feet become stone. You wake with your toes frozen stiff, numb with the kind of cold that doesn't leave. There are no socks, and even if you had them, they'd be soaked through in minutes. You wrap your feet in rags, maybe stuff them with straw if you're clever, but the moisture always finds a way in. You stomp through snow and slush, knowing that every step might bring you closer to frostbite. Toes go black, skin hardens. Eventually, the tissue dies. And when that happens, no one amputates. No one saves you. You lose a foot, a leg, or your life. Even when people do have shoes, they barely qualify. Thin leather, untanned and untreated, stitched crudely together. They wear out in a few weeks, become misshapen, rip at the seams. They provide little protection and even less comfort. They're slippery when wet and brittle when dry. Arch support is a fantasy. You'd be better off walking on 2 wooden planks. Some people literally do. But most go without. And the worst part? No one pities you. This is normal. Expected. Everyone's feet are ruined. Everyone limps. Everyone knows the pain of stepping into frozen dung before dawn, or slicing open their arch on a buried shard of bone. You see old men with twisted feet and missing toes and think nothing of it. Because that's not an exception. It's your future. Shoes, if you ever get a pair, won't be stylish. They'll be a shield. A rare moment of mercy in a life that gives you none. Until then, you walk on broken earth with broken feet, each step a small sacrifice to a world that never cared how far you had to go, or what it cost you to get there. You might think you work for yourself, that the sweat soaking your tunic and the blisters on your hands are building something you can call your own. But in 1325, nothing you have is truly yours. Not the land you till, not the home you sleep in, not even the food you grow. It all belongs to Him, the Lord. A man whose boots you've never looked in the eye, but whose shadow falls over everything you do. You don't just live under his rule. You live inside his property, and that includes your body. Your village exists on his estate. The soil under your feet is his. The plow you push, if you're lucky enough to have one, is borrowed from the manor. Your ox? His. Even your time is leased. You owe the Lord several days of forced labor every week, working not for your family, but for his fields, his harvest, his wealth. These are called corvée days, and they're non-negotiable. Rain or illness doesn't excuse you. The Lord's barley won't wait, and your pain isn't on his schedule. Then come the dues. A chunk of your own harvest, barley, wheat, eggs, wool, goes directly to him. Not what's left after your family eats. The first and best portions are claimed by the manor. And if you don't deliver what's expected, you'll meet the bailiff, a man with a ledger in one hand and a club in the other. They can fine you, take your tools, seize your livestock. In extreme cases, you can be evicted from your strip of land entirely, tossed into a world with nowhere to go and no one to care. Even your personal life isn't entirely yours. If you want to marry someone from another estate, you need permission. If you want to leave the village, you need permission. If your son grows up and wants to escape this grind, guess what? He can't. He's tied to the land, just like you, just like your father before you. That's the essence of serfdom. You're not a slave, not exactly, but you're not free either. You're bonded, bound, and every breath you take reinforces the contract written not on paper, but in soil, sweat, and submission. And while you break your back in the fields, what's the Lord doing? Feasting, lounging, hunting for sport, not survival. He eats white bread, not the stone-filled rye you gnaw on. He drinks wine. He sleeps on a feather bed in a hall with servants who actually bathe. He does not labor. He commands. And when famine hits, he still eats. When plague strikes, he still receives care. If your child dies, he sends no condolences. If your wife collapses in the fields, he does not pause his meal. This isn't unfair. It isn't unjust. Not here, not now. It's simply the way things are. The hierarchy is baked into every part of your life, from your prayers to your taxes. You do the work. He reaps the benefit. You suffer, so he doesn't have to. And if you ever forget your place, the system is more than happy to remind you. Because in the Middle Ages, the law, the church, and the sword all agree. He owns, you serve. In 1325, God isn't just in the heavens. He's in your home, your fields, your thoughts, and your nightmares. Religion isn't a personal journey or a private comfort. It's a daily obligation, a public performance, and a terrifying force that wraps around your life like a vice. You don't choose your faith. You are born into it, baptized before you can crawl, and judged by it until the day you die, and well beyond. The church doesn't suggest how to live. It dictates it. Every hour, every action, every mistake. You hear the bell before you see the sun. It rings from the village church, cutting through fog and sleep like a blade. It calls you not to celebration, but to duty. Morning prayers, noon prayers, evening prayers. Your entire day is bracketed by rituals you must observe or risk sin. And sin is never private. It's a stain on your soul, an offense against God, and a reason to be punished in this life or the next. Miss Mass on Sunday? Sin. Speak ill of a priest? Sin. Eat meat on a Friday during Lent? That could land you in hellfire unless you confess it fast enough to avoid eternal damnation. The church watches everything, not with eyes, but through the community. Your neighbors notice if you miss Mass. Your family knows if you failed to tithe. Gossip becomes surveillance. You confess your sins to a priest who might have known you since birth and who can deny you absolution. He is your spiritual guide and your social gatekeeper. You can't marry without him. You can't bury your dead without him. You can't exist in this world or the next without his blessing. There's no Bible for you to read. It's written in Latin, a language you don't speak, taught only in monasteries and noble courts. You rely on the priest to tell you what's in it. What he says, you believe, because you must. Doubt is heresy. And heresy, that's not just a sin, it's a crime. People are burned for it, or drowned, or tortured until they confess to beliefs they never held. Questioning the church is like questioning gravity. You only do it once, and you don't survive the fall. Holy days dominate the calendar. You celebrate dozens of saints' feast days each year, but they're not days off. They're days of fasting, processions, mandatory church attendance, and constant reminders that your soul is always in peril. Joy is cautiously indulged, and guilt is never far behind. Even your thoughts betray you. Lust, sin, envy, sin, pride, the worst sin of all. And the church doesn't just take your time and your obedience. It takes your goods. A full tenth of everything you produce goes to God's house, through his earthly representatives. You give your best grain, your fattest chicken, your finest cloth. The priest lives better than you do. His home is warmer, his food is fresher, and yet he stands at the pulpit and reminds you that poverty is virtuous, that suffering brings you closer to Christ, that your place at the bottom of the world is sacred. You believe because you must, because not believing is more dangerous than disease or famine, because hell isn't just real. It's described in vivid, horrifying detail, week after week. You live with the weight of your sins, real or imagined. You pray for forgiveness, for mercy, for endurance, and you try to be good. But in a world where everything is a potential offense, goodness becomes a balancing act between fear and habit. The church isn't just a building in the center of your village. It's the center of your reality. It sees all, judges all, and forgives very, very little. In 1325, salvation comes with a price tag, and the church collects with the precision of a taxman and the authority of a king. You are poor. Everyone around you is, but that doesn't matter. Poverty isn't an excuse when your soul is on the line. You may be starving. You may be freezing. You may be down to your last turnip, and still, the church expects its due. You tithe, because it's not a request. It's a holy obligation. And if you don't give, you don't just risk judgment in this world, you risk it in the next. The tithe is a tenth, 10% of everything. Not what's left after you feed your family, not a symbolic gesture. It's 10% of all you produce, no matter how meager, no matter how desperate your situation. You grew 10 bushels of barley, 1 belongs to God. Caught 6 fish, the plumpest goes to the church. Raised a hen that finally laid eggs, the best eggs are carried, trembling in your hands, up to the stone steps of the chapel. It doesn't matter that your children's ribs are showing. God comes first, and the tithes don't stop at food. You owe your labor too. The church owns fields, vineyards, flocks, and you're expected to help tend them, especially during harvest. If your own crops are failing, if your own child is sick, it doesn't exempt you. The church's land must be cared for. It must prosper. It always does. Where does it all go? To the priest, to the abbey, to the bishop's coffers. Your grain feeds men in robes who never stoop to plant a seed. Your livestock stocks the cellars of monasteries that dine on meat and wine, while you gnaw bark-thick bread. The priest wears robes finer than anything you'll ever touch. The altar gleams with gold. Candles burn where oil is scarce. The church is the only building made of stone for miles, high-roofed, echoing, cold and powerful. It stands above you in every way. They tell you this is for your own good, that the church intercedes for your soul, keeps plague and famine at bay, speaks to God on your behalf, that your sacrifice buys you a better place in the next life. You try to believe it. Because if this world is all there is, if there's no reward after the hunger and the cold and the back-breaking labor, then all of this pain is just cruelty without purpose. Some try to withhold, to offer less. They're found out quickly. Word spreads. The priest scolds them by name at Mass. They're denied communion. Their families are shunned. And when they die, they're buried without rites, without blessings, outside the churchyard, in dirt meant for animals and heretics. To die without church approval isn't just disgrace, it's spiritual exile. So you keep giving. You tithe when you're empty. You kneel when your knees are raw. You hope that your small offerings, your whispered prayers, your silent suffering will be enough to earn you something better beyond this life. Because in the Middle Ages, heaven isn't free, and the only way to buy your way in is by starving first. If you're a woman in 1325, you're already at a disadvantage. But if you're alone, unmarried, widowed, childless, or simply outspoken, that disadvantage becomes a target. Society doesn't trust women who don't fit neatly into their prescribed roles. And when people are hungry, sick, or scared, as they often are in a world ruled by ignorance and desperation, they look for someone to blame. That someone is often you. Witchcraft isn't a costume or a fantasy here. It's a death sentence, and the evidence required to condemn you is laughably thin. Did the crops fail after you argued with your neighbor? Are cows miscarrying in the village after you refused to share bread? Did someone fall sick after you offered a tonic or prayer? Suddenly, you're not just a woman, you're a witch. And in a world this cruel, being labeled a witch is often as good as being guilty. You don't need to cast a spell. You don't need to own a black cat or mutter Latin. You just need to be disliked, different, or inconvenient. Maybe you're a widow with land people want. Maybe you have herbal knowledge passed down from your mother. Maybe you speak your mind. Or maybe you simply survived a few too many tragedies. That alone can raise suspicion. People whisper, "Why is she still alive? What is she hiding?" And once the whispers start, they rarely stop. There is no defense. Accusation alone is enough to warrant arrest. From that point on, your fate is in the hands of men who see torture as a tool of divine clarity. They'll tie your thumbs to your ankles and hang you upside down. They'll place you on the rack until your joints dislocate. They'll crush your fingers in vices or drive slivers under your nails. And when you scream, when your body breaks, they'll call it confession. If you name others, neighbors, family, other women, they'll be next. If you don't, they'll keep going until you do. Sometimes, they drown you. They bind your hands and feet and toss you into a river. If you sink, you're innocent, but dead. If you float, you're guilty and punished. It's not justice, it's performance, a public cleansing, a lesson to every other woman who dares step out of line. And torture isn't reserved only for witches. Nagging wives, quarrelsome widows, and disobedient daughters face their own humiliations. The scold's bridle, a metal cage fitted over the head with a tongue-pressing bit, is fastened to women who talk too much. They're paraded through the village, laughed at, spat on. The goal isn't just punishment, it's submission, it's silence. None of this is rare. None of it is shocking to the people around you. It's just another part of village life, like harvest, like prayer, like death. Men have their burdens, yes, but as a woman, your mere existence is a kind of risk. And if you step even slightly out of place, the same fire you cook your meals over may one day be used to end your story. Because in the Middle Ages, you don't have to be a witch to burn. You just have to be in the way. In 1325, justice isn't about truth. It's about spectacle, warning, and keeping the fragile order of a brutal society intact by any means necessary. There's no trial by jury, no defense attorney, no presumption of innocence. There's only accusation, suspicion, and then judgment, swift, cruel, and very often fatal. God's will is invoked, but man's hand does the killing, and everyone gathers to watch. The punishments are designed to be memorable, not merciful. If you steal a loaf of bread, you might lose a hand. If you're caught lying, your tongue could be pierced with a hot iron or ripped out entirely. Gossip too much? Meet the scold's bridle, a spiked metal mask locked around your head while you're marched through the village square. If you're accused of heresy or blasphemy, or even just fall out of favor with someone powerful, you might be flogged, branded, or worse. And all of this happens in public, with your neighbors watching, sometimes laughing, sometimes praying, but always present. Executions aren't hidden behind stone walls. They're staged, like festivals. When someone's to be hanged, a platform is built. People bring their children. Vendors sell food. The priest gives last rites while the crowd jostles for a better view. Beheadings are saved for the more noble or the more notorious. It's seen as cleaner, but not always. If the executioner's hand is unsteady or his blade dull, it takes multiple swings. The crowd flinches, gasps, cheers. Blood pools into the dirt, and the axe is wiped clean, ready for the next name. And then there's torture, not just as punishment, but as process. The rack stretches your limbs until joints pop from sockets. The Iron Maiden, lined with hidden spikes, turns your body into a pincushion of agony. The wheel, your body broken and tied to its spokes, is spun before a crowd, your bones snapped and left to the birds. These aren't myths, they're methods, sanctioned and practiced. The justification? It's always the same. This is God's justice. The church supports it. The state enforces it. The people accept it. Mercy is weakness. Deterrence is divine. And fear? Fear keeps the village from falling apart. Children see their first hanging before they lose their first tooth. Women are reminded what happens if they disobey. Men learn to nod, to kneel, to follow. And over it all, the grim truth lingers. You don't have to be guilty to be punished. You just have to be caught, or accused, or unlucky. Because in the Middle Ages, law isn't about fairness. It's about control. It's about reminding everyone where they stand, and what happens if they step out of line. The execution isn't just the end of a life. It's a message, written in blood and entrails, so clear even the illiterate understand it. Obedience is survival. Everything else is death. When the sun finally sinks behind the trees, and your body aches from hours of punishing labor, you might think dinner would bring some small comfort. A warm fire, a hearty meal, a moment of peace. But this is 1325, and the only thing more constant than hunger is disappointment. Dinner isn't a reward. It's a reminder that in the Middle Ages, Survival is its own meal, and comfort never made it onto the menu. What's in the pot? Pottage. Always pottage. A grim gray stew that's more water than substance. It bubbles over the fire, not because it's fresh, but because it's been simmering for days, sometimes weeks. New ingredients, if you have them, are dumped on top of old ones. There's no clean out, no start over. It's an edible compost pile. Mostly, it's boiled roots, turnips, onions, maybe a carrot if you're lucky. Grains float in it, barley or oats, often with bits of husk still clinging. Sometimes beans, rarely meat. And when there is meat, it's probably salted beyond recognition, or halfway to spoiled, barely scraped free of green fuzz before it hits the pot. Your bread is a brick, hard as stone, dark with barley or rye, bulked up with whatever filler you could find. Acorn flour, ground bark, sometimes even sawdust. Real wheat bread is a fantasy for nobles. You don't slice this bread. You tear it, gnaw it, soak it in the pottage until it softens enough to chew without breaking a tooth. Mold is common. You cut off the worst of it, but the rest still tastes faintly of rot and regret. And you eat it anyway, because what else is there? Spices? Not for you. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, those belong to the rich. Imported across continents, worth more than gold. A single pinch of nutmeg could cost more than you earn in a month. Your flavor palette is salt, if you've got it, and maybe a wild herb or two. Everything else tastes like wood, dirt, or despair. And you don't eat until you're full. You eat until there's nothing left. Hunger isn't an event. It's a constant companion. Milk, sour by midday. Cheese, hard as rock, crawling with mites. Butter, a rare treat. Fruit exists, but only in season, and it rots fast. Vegetables are whatever didn't die in the field, boiled until they resemble something between soup and punishment. Your dinner is eaten by firelight, surrounded by bodies and silence. Maybe the baby cries. Maybe your grandfather coughs in the corner. Maybe your stomach turns at the sight of another night of the same. And through it all, you pretend it's enough. Because it has to be. You don't have options. You don't have recipes. You don't even have utensils, sometimes. Just a wooden spoon, a shared bowl, and the fading hope that there's enough to get you through the night. In 1325, dinner doesn't fill you. It reminds you you're still alive. And somehow, that has to be enough. In the Middle Ages, dinner doesn't just disappoint, it might kill you. You've already choked down pottage thick with mystery roots, and bread hard enough to chip a molar. But lurking beneath the bland taste and foul texture is something far more dangerous than bad flavor. The very food keeping you alive is also poisoning you, and you don't even know it. Let's start with bread, the cornerstone of every peasant meal. Rye is the most common grain for your class, hardy, reliable, and easier to grow than precious wheat. But rye has a dark secret. Under the right conditions, especially in damp seasons, it becomes the perfect host for a fungus called ergot. You can't see it, not with your eyes. Maybe the loaf looks a little darker. Maybe there's a strange tingle on your tongue, but you don't question it. You're hungry, so you eat. And that's when the real horror begins. Ergot is a natural toxin. Once inside your body, it doesn't just make you sick. It wages war on your brain and your blood. You feel it first as a strange buzzing under the skin, then cramping in the stomach, then twitching muscles. Soon you're hallucinating, not the whimsical, dreamlike kind. These are visions soaked in dread, fiery apparitions, phantom beasts, voices calling your name. You scream, you convulse, Your hands curl into claws. You may think you're possessed. Others might agree. The priest is summoned. The neighbors start whispering. And all the while, the mold in your bread keeps working through your veins. This is called St. Anthony's fire by some, a holy punishment by others. But it's not divine wrath. It's ergotism. You were just trying to eat. Now you're writhing in a corner, burning from the inside out. In some cases, your limbs go black and die. The fungus constricts your blood vessels, cutting off circulation until fingers, toes, and sometimes entire arms rot and fall off. In others, it causes internal bleeding, seizures, or death. There is no cure. No one understands the cause. So they treat it with prayer, leeches, and fear. And ergo is just one threat. Food poisoning is everywhere. There are no refrigerators, no expiration dates, no knowledge of bacteria. Meat is dried, smoked, or salted if you're lucky. But often, it just spoils. You cut off the gray, boil it in pottage, and hope the fire killed whatever was inside. It usually doesn't. You eat and wait. Sometimes it's just cramps and diarrhea. Sometimes it's vomiting and fever. Sometimes it's death in a day. You don't call it salmonella or botulism. You call it bad meat and prepare for your burial. Even the water used in cooking can betray you. A pot of stew made from rainwater collected in a barrel might contain parasites, dead insects, or worse. You pray before meals, not just out of tradition, but because every bite is a gamble. The same food that sustains you today might kill you tomorrow. In 1325, nourishment isn't about pleasure or even strength. It's about survival in the most literal sense. Every meal is a roll of the dice, and sometimes the house wins. The forest looms at the edge of your village like a promise you're not allowed to touch. Its trees rise like silent judges, branches heavy with birdsong, and its undergrowth alive with the shuffle of deer, rabbits, and boar. You can hear it every morning when you wake, the rustle of prey, the calls of animals fattened by nature's bounty. It's all right there, just beyond the fieldstone wall, just a short walk from your hunger, and it doesn't matter. Because in 1325, the forest is forbidden, and everything in it belongs to someone else. The Lord owns the forest. Every tree, every creature, every mushroom, every fallen branch. It doesn't matter that you and your neighbors are starving, that your children's bellies are distended, or that your pottage hasn't seen meat since the last feast day, months ago. That fat stag wandering the woods? That's his. That rabbit nibbling at the edge of your field? His. That squirrel you trapped to survive the winter? That could get you killed. Poaching isn't a minor crime. It's theft. And not just any theft. Stealing the Lord's property, his privilege, his prestige. Game is reserved for noble sport, a symbol of power and class. When a noble hunts, it's recreation. When you do it, it's rebellion. Get caught with a snare, a bow, even a skinned hare, and the punishment is swift and merciless. You could be fined more than your yearly income. You could be flogged, mutilated, or imprisoned in a manorial dungeon. In some places, poaching means death by hanging, your body left to rot as a warning to others with empty stomachs and dangerous thoughts, and they will catch you. Forest wardens patrol the woods with dogs and clubs, trained to track and interrogate. Informers are everywhere, other peasants hoping to earn favor or avoid suspicion. You can't trust your neighbors. You can't trust your family. A whispered rumor is enough to summon the reeve, who drags you to the manor court, where your defense is meaningless and your fate already sealed. The irony is suffocating. You walk to the edge of the woods, with a belly gnawing itself hollow, staring at rabbits too numerous to count, and berries hanging low from the brambles. You could feed your family with what you see in 1 hour's walk. But if you take so much as a fallen branch for firewood, you're stealing. You freeze in winter beside a forest that crackles with kindling. You starve while animals die of old age feet from your door. The forest isn't just denied to you, it mocks you. Its abundance is a silent indictment of the world's cruelty. You toil for crusts and turnips, while nobility hunts on horseback, laughing as they chase hares and stags you're not even allowed to look at too long. Their hounds eat better than your children. Their trophies hang in halls while your bones grow brittle from hunger. And still, you don't dare cross that line. Because in 1325, the forest may offer life, but only if you're ready to risk your own in exchange. In 1325, food is not celebration. It is not comfort, not love, not the centerpiece of family gathering or ritual warmth. Food is survival, stripped of ceremony. It is a chore, a biological necessity to keep your legs moving and your heart beating so you can endure another brutal day. You don't eat with joy. You eat because not eating is worse. There is no table setting, no wine poured in laughter, no shared stories passed around with the bowl. Dinner, if it happens at all, is eaten in silence, or groans, or squabbles over who gets the thicker crust, or the last bite of turnip. You eat on the floor, or on a log, or perched on the edge of your straw bedding, fingers wrapped around a wooden bowl, licking at a spoon carved by your grandfather and never once washed with soap. There is no second course, no dessert. What you have is what you scrounged, harvested, or traded that day. A slurry of pottage that's grown grayer and thinner each night. Maybe a heel of mold-speckled bread, too hard for the baby to chew. Maybe a sliver of cheese, sour and sweating, if someone traded eggs for it at the manor. You drink weak beer because the water might kill you. You chew slowly, not because you're savoring, but because your jaw is sore, and the bread could snap a molar if you aren't careful. Your family eats with you, but the idea of eating together is laughable. There's no warmth in the gathering, just bodies huddled in the same room, scraping bowls in the dark, hoping no one spills theirs into the mud floor. There's no conversation, no, "How was your day?" Because you know how the day was. Everyone suffered it together. The only thing left to do now is get through the meal and try to sleep. Children eat less, not because they're smaller, but because there isn't enough. Mothers go without so sons can grow. Infants are weaned early onto gruel that barely nourishes. Toddlers pick through scraps. If someone dies, there's a grim practicality to it. One less mouth to feed. You don't talk about it. You don't cry at the table. You just chew. There are no feasts in your life, unless the Lord throws one to celebrate a birth or a victory, and you're allowed to watch. You stand in the courtyard, licking grease from your fingers, trying to commit the taste of real meat to memory before you return to your daily swamp of boiled roots and bitterness. Even holidays, meant to be spiritual reprieves, rarely bring enough to lift the meal into anything resembling joy. You eat kneeling in gratitude, perhaps, but not pleasure. Because even on Christmas, it's still pottage, still silence, still survival. In the Middle Ages, food is not about delight. It's not about togetherness. It's about putting something in your body so you don't collapse in the field tomorrow. It is fuel, not flavor. Function, not feeling. You eat to stay alive. But nothing about the act reminds you why life is worth staying in. Once in a while, the bleak monotony of medieval life cracks open, and something extraordinary wafts through the village. The smell of meat. It's a feast day, a holy occasion sanctioned by the church and blessed by the calendar. Maybe it's a saint's day, a wedding, a harvest festival, or Christmas. Whatever the reason, today you won't eat gray pottage and stale bread. Today, there is food with shape, with texture, with flavor. Real meat, maybe. Honey. Spices, if the Lord's feeling generous. For once, your stomach growls in anticipation, not dread. It doesn't matter that you're exhausted from the week's labor, or that you haven't bathed in months. Everyone dresses in their least filthy tunic and trudges toward the manor yard or village square. Fires are already burning. Pots hang from iron hooks, boiling over with stew that smells of fat and garlic. You can't tell if it's pig, goose, or something more questionable, but you don't care. The scent alone is enough to make your knees weak. There's bread, freshly baked, still warm, if you're early enough to grab a piece. Not the usual rock-hard rye, but a soft, airy loaf made with actual wheat flour. Fluffy, white, and so rare it feels almost criminal. There are pies with sweet fillings made from apples or berries, sometimes wrapped in lard pastry. You don't ask how many hands have touched the ingredients. You eat quickly, before someone takes it from you. If meat is served, it's a communal event. A pig slaughtered for the village, its body roasted on a spit until the fat crackles and the skin turns crisp. Or a stew thick with offal, bones, and chunks of something chewy enough to guess, but never confirm. Sometimes it's a rabbit or deer, gifted, or more likely poached, and passed around in greasy strips. You drink strong ale for once, instead of the weak child's beer you choke down daily. For a few hours, you feel warmth, not just from the fire, but from within. You laugh. You loosen your grip on your bowl. You remember what it's like to feel full. And then, the problems begin. Your stomach isn't used to this. It's a shriveled sack, trained to process gruel and grit. So when you gorge on fatty pork and buttery bread, it revolts. You feel it twist first, slow, like a warning, and then violently. Cramps double you over. The meat might have been undercooked. The pie might have been stored too long. The ale might have gone sour. Within hours, the outhouse becomes a battlefield. People moan in corners. Children vomit behind haystacks. Elders lie on their backs, whispering prayers. There's no concept of food safety, no refrigeration, no knowledge of bacteria or parasites. The only real rule is, don't waste anything, even if that means scraping mold off a pie or cooking meat that smells slightly wrong. So you pay for your moment of joy with a night of agony. You sleep curled on your side, clutching your belly, trying to remember if it was worth it. And it was. Because even in sickness, even knowing the price, that meal was a rebellion against the starvation that defines your life. You'll remember the taste of that meat for months, maybe for years. Because in the Middle Ages, a feast is not a tradition. It's a miracle. And most miracles hurt. In the 14th century, old age is a story told more than a stage of life reached. You've heard of elders who lived past 50, maybe even met one once. Stooped, silent, eyes like weathered stone. But those people are rare, almost mythical, like a village legend, whispered with equal parts awe and disbelief. The truth is, most don't live long enough to go gray. In 1325, if you see your 40th year, you're ancient. If you make it to 50, you're a living miracle. And chances are, you'll spend your last years in pain, bent like a sickle, and barely able to stand. The average life expectancy hovers around 35, but that number is a lie in its own way. It's pulled down by a tidal wave of childhood death, Half of all children die before reaching the age of 5. Disease, malnutrition, accidents, the cold, the plague. You don't need a reason, only time. A cough turns into a funeral. A fever becomes a death sentence. Babies who survive past infancy are already half wild with exposure and hard living, their bodies scarred and stunted from a life begun in struggle. If you survive childhood, adolescence doesn't offer much relief. You're already working by 5, bearing real responsibilities by 7 or 8. Girls are often married by 12, giving birth by 14. Boys are in the fields or the forge long before their voices change. You enter adulthood long before your body is ready for it, and your spine, knees, and hands begin breaking down before you even understand what longevity is. You don't grow old in the medieval world. You wear out. Work destroys your body slowly, steadily, without mercy. Teeth rot and fall out. Your joints swell and lock. Your bones bend under decades of hauling, lifting, stooping. There is no rest, no retirement. When your body stops functioning, you're not taken care of. You're taken out of the way. You move slower, fall behind, and in a society where every hand must contribute, slowing down is dangerous. And then there's the randomness of death. Infection from a toothache, a festering wound from a rusted tool, a winter storm that collapses your roof. One bad meal, one sip of filthy water, one careless step into a ditch, and your story ends. There's no doctor, no cure, no second opinion. People die suddenly, without warning. You bury them quickly, often without ceremony. Death is common. Grief is routine. Even the noble classes, with all their wealth and servants and thick stone walls, aren't spared. They die of infection, childbirth, hunting accidents, or bad medicine, just like the rest of us. Power delays death, but it does not deny it. There's no growing old with dignity here. No golden years. You don't take up hobbies. You don't relax in retirement. You just survive for as long as your bones allow. And when they fail, when you fall or cough or bleed in the wrong place, the village priest appears, mutters his rites, and the world moves on. In the Middle Ages, death isn't a chapter at the end. It's a constant footnote to every page. You don't plan for the future. You don't dream of a long life. You eat what you can, work until you break, and pray that your name is remembered, at least until your grave is covered in weeds. Because here, the old are ghosts among the living, and most of us never get to join them. In the Middle Ages, death doesn't arrive with drama. It creeps, it seeps, it stalks the village slowly, then all at once, and nothing embodies that dread more than the Black Death. But in 1325, the term bubonic plague hasn't even been invented yet. You just call it what it feels like, the end of everything. When it comes, and it always comes, it doesn't knock. It kicks the door in, hollowing out villages, torching families, and turning familiar faces into corpses overnight. It starts subtly. A merchant's cart comes through town. A rat scurries out from under a wheel. A flea bites, and within days, someone has a fever. It's just one person at first. They cough, sweat, stumble. They look pale, then gray. A few days later, their lymph nodes swell, huge bulging lumps beneath the armpits, at the neck, between the thighs. The villagers call them God's tokens. The priests say it's divine punishment. Everyone else just stares and waits. Then the screaming starts. It spreads fast. Bodies pile up in the churchyard, then in ditches, then wherever there's space. Gravediggers die while digging graves. Priests stop giving last rites because they don't want to touch the sick. Entire households vanish within a week. You see a neighbor walking on Monday, and by Friday, you're praying over his swollen body, if you're brave enough to go near it. Most aren't. And this is just one plague. There are others. Famine rolls through in the years when harvests fail, when there's too much rain or too little, when the barley molds in the ground, or rats eat the stores. Hunger doesn't kill quickly. It kills by degrees. First, people eat less. Then they sell their tools. Then they eat the seed grain meant for next spring. Then the dogs. Then the bark from trees. Then, sometimes, each other. Yes, cannibalism happens. Quietly. Desperately. War, too, is always a heartbeat away. Your village is caught in the orbit of kings and lords who fight over land you'll never own. Armies come not to liberate, but to strip. They burn crops, take what's edible, torch what's not. They conscript your sons, rape your daughters, and ride off into the woods. What's left behind are ruins and sobbing children and empty fields. When all three, plague, famine, war, arrive together, society collapses, markets close, villages empty, fields lie fallow. You stop using coins and start bartering bread for cloth, candles for nails. Laws fall apart. The church preaches repentance but retreats behind closed doors. Order vanishes, and fear becomes the new religion. No one talks about the future anymore. You speak only in seasons. If you make it to winter, if the spring brings grain, if next summer doesn't come with sickness. Your world is always waiting for the next disaster. And deep down, you know it's already on the way. Because in 1325, the plague is never truly gone. It's just biding its time, hiding in rats, in water, in strangers' coughs, watching. And when it returns, and it will, it won't come for the wicked. It will come for everyone. When death comes, and in 1325, it comes often, it doesn't arrive with dignity. There are no silk-lined coffins, no velvet drapery, no organ music echoing through a cathedral. You die, and you vanish. Sometimes within hours. Because in a world overwhelmed by mortality, funerals aren't solemn ceremonies. They're logistics. They're hasty. And more often than not, they're skipped altogether. If you're lucky, truly lucky, someone is still alive to notice that you've stopped breathing. A family member, a neighbor, the priest's apprentice passing by. If you die alone, you might not be found for days. And by then, your body has already started to change. There's no embalming here. No ice, no refrigeration, just rot. You swell, you stink, and the flies arrive like mourners, no one invited. The goal isn't to remember you. It's to get you into the ground before you become a public hazard. If your family has enough coin, or if you were known by the church, you might get a few words said over your body. A prayer muttered quickly, a handful of holy water sprinkled with a twig. If there's time and someone cares enough, maybe you'll be wrapped in a rough shroud, usually made from whatever cloth isn't too filthy or valuable to keep. Then comes the burial itself, which is often a shallow hole dug in overworked soil, barely wide enough to fit you. There is no coffin, no gravestone, just earth piled high and tamped down, with maybe a scrap of wood to mark the spot. If it rains, the dirt runs. If animals come, the dirt shifts. And if there's a plague or famine sweeping the land, forget it. The bodies come too fast. There's no time for individual burial. You're tossed into a pit alongside dozens of others. Children, elders, the coughing man from 2 huts over. Mass graves fill the edges of towns like trench scars. No markers, no names. Just a memory that fades as soon as the next death arrives. The rich, of course, are buried differently. Stone crypts beneath churches, candles lit in dark chapels, Latin prayers chanted over carved sarcophagi. Sometimes their bones are moved later, stored in catacombs or ossuaries, skulls stacked in patterns, femurs lining the walls like grim wallpaper. Even in death, class persists. Even in burial, you're reminded of your place. For most of us, there is no inheritance passed on, no legacy left behind. Just the faint imprint of your body in the soil, and maybe a memory or two clinging to your children, if they survive. In a generation or two, you'll be forgotten completely, not because no one cared, but because survival doesn't leave much room for mourning. You live in a time when people die too quickly, too often, and too quietly to be celebrated. There is no closure, just absence. One day you're breathing. The next, the straw bed is empty, and someone else is already sleeping in your place. In the Middle Ages, funerals are a privilege. Death? That's just a given. In 1325, your name is spoken only while you're still breathing. Once you die, it fades, softly, quickly, without resistance. There is no legacy, no record, no lineage carved into stone or preserved in ink. You're not remembered, you're replaced. And in the grand ledger of history, peasants like you don't even warrant a footnote. There's no birth certificate, no family tree. Your name might be scribbled once in a baptismal register, if the priest bothers. But even that ink fades faster than your body will. You don't have a surname, just something that ties you to a place. John from Mill Lane, Agnes of the Ash Tree. When you vanish, someone else takes your field, your hut, your tools, and your name, if it's remembered at all, becomes a placeholder for hard luck or a bad harvest. Remember when John died and the barley failed? You have no land to pass on, no money, no keepsakes, no heirlooms wrapped in cloth. Maybe your child inherits your hoe, your rusted sickle, your stiff wool tunic. Maybe not. Most possessions rot as quickly as their owners. If you do leave something behind, it's not a legacy, it's a burden. A hungry child, a thatched roof half collapsed, a debt owed to the miller or the reeve. Your memory lingers like smoke, thin, irritating, and gone with the wind. Your stories die with the people who knew you, and those people are dying constantly. There are no portraits, no journals. You can't read, and no one writes about you. The only ones recorded in chronicles are kings and killers, nobles, priests, and the monsters they called saints. You serve their tables, build their roads, grow their food, fight their wars. But you are not written into their songs or their prayers. You are the dirt beneath their boots, both literally and figuratively. Dreams, if you have them, are small. You don't dream of changing the world. You dream of surviving winter, of maybe having a full bowl at dinner, of not burying another child before your next birthday. You dream of rest, not revolution. Ambition is dangerous. It leads to disappointment, suspicion, or worse. A peasant who wants more is a problem. A peasant who wants nothing is perfect. Even in the church, where you're told every soul is equal in the eyes of God, your experience is secondhand. You listen to the priest speak Latin words you can't understand. You kneel on the cold stone and hope that someone in heaven is keeping track, because no one on earth is. They tell you paradise is waiting, that your suffering is holy. But you wonder, if the suffering is remembered by no one, does the reward even matter? When you're gone, there's no marker, no song. Maybe someone lights a candle, maybe not. Within a season, someone else lives in your hut, tends your field, takes your place in the line for bread. They won't know your name. They won't care. Because in the Middle Ages, history belongs to the powerful, and the rest of us, millions of us, vanish like breath in the frost. And yet, through the cold, the hunger, the rot, the fear, people still sang. Not because life was easy, not because joy was abundant, but because even in a world built on suffering, the human spirit refused to go quietly. In the darkest corners of the Middle Ages, where every day was a test of endurance, something within people still reached upward, defiant. They laughed, they danced, they whispered love to one another in smoke-choked huts, with leaking roofs and straw floors crawling with fleas. A peasant child with a distended belly from malnutrition still carved little figures from wood and gave them names. A girl gathering herbs for her mother still hummed a tune she barely remembered. A bent old man with no teeth left still sang to the sky, voice cracked, eyes shining, remembering a wife long gone. It didn't matter that no one wrote down their songs. They sang them anyway. In the fields, they told stories, legends passed down orally, from mouths that chewed moldy bread and smiled anyway. Myths of saints and monsters, fables of foxes who tricked noblemen, stories where, for once, the poor triumphed. They were told and retold, reshaped with every season, keeping people warm in a world that offered precious little fire. People married, not always for love, but sometimes despite everything, love still found its way. Eyes met across the harvest rows, hands brushed while drawing water. Weddings were held, crude and rushed, but still sacred. Two people promising not happiness, but endurance. And when children came, there was joy, real joy, however brief, however fragile. In taverns, voices rose in song after dusk. The ale was weak, the bread was bitter, but the laughter was loud. The lyrics were bawdy, the rhythm was off, and yet in those moments, pain loosened its grip. These people, pressed down by labor and law and endless cold, still found ways to rise, not in rebellion, but in rhythm. They clapped, stomped, banged mugs on splintered tables, and for a while, no one thought about the plague, or the tithe, or the Lord's taxes. Faith helped too. Not always the church. Often, it was faith in each other, in the cycles of the sun and the soil, in birth following death, in spring returning after the worst winters. They prayed not just to saints and relics, but to the land, the sky, the chance that maybe tomorrow would be gentler. And so, they endured. Not because life was kind, but because something in them was stronger than everything that tried to extinguish it. You can bury a peasant without a name. You can crush her under poverty, silence his hopes, steal his labor, but you cannot quite kill the spark that says, I am still here. And that spark, though small, burned across centuries. So tonight, as you sit in your warm home with clean water